Welcome to the So You Want to Start a Business podcast. Welcome. I am your host, Ingrid Thompson. This is a podcast for and about entrepreneurs and business leaders who think big, take intentional action to create business success, financial independence, and who make a difference in the world. We're here to provide helpful, lively, and thought-provoking podcasts. And based on the feedback from you, it is all of this and more. I know you're keen to build your business to have an impact in the world and live a life you love, generating healthy cash flow, sustained profits, and paying yourself an income. Listen in because the So You Want to Start a Business podcast has been made just for you. I'm your host, Ingrid Thompson, and I've been running my own business, Healthy Numbers, for almost 20 years. During this time, I have worked with literally hundreds of people to help build, grow successful, thriving businesses. In this podcast, we hear from inspiring entrepreneurs, business owners who tell their business stories and they tell it like it is, the ups and the downs. Each episode is your opportunity to pick up tactics to try in your business. Oh my gosh, today is a wonderful conversation with Barbara Mutedzi. Here is Barbara talking about what being in business means to her and why she wanted to create her own business.
So I followed the joy in me and I followed the things I was curious about. And, one of my mantras is that we're all spiritual beings who are living this limited human life. And our spirit knows why we are here. So you can call it your spirit, your intuition, your soul, the God in you, your Dharma, whatever it is, that voice in you that really knows you, knows why you're here. And when we take time to follow the things we're curious about and to follow and do the things we're joyful about, I call those little breadcrumbs that our soul lives for us to follow towards our life purpose. And I use that when I'm coaching people to figure out their life purpose. So for me, I followed and wanted to do the things that brought me joy. And that's how I got to do what I'm doing.
Barbara is a medical anthropologist. Who knew there even was such a profession? And she explains it to us as the decisions we make because of or in spite of our health. Fascinating. In fact, she tells a whole lot more about what it is, but I'm not even going to try to describe it. You'll need to listen in for Barbara's explanation of medical anthropology. This is an intelligent discussion about this astounding woman's life, her thoughts, and her experience. Barbara is on a mission to change the world. This has been her life's journey. She talks about how she creates a safe place for her clients where they can be truly heard. She says that when we have a solid base from which to operate, we can achieve so much more. She is the first person I have interviewed in this entire podcast series who had a very real financial plan mapped out for getting started. I think you're going to truly find a lot of value in this, the way she thinks about her pricing philosophy. She's a service-based business, and I know that other service-based businesses often struggle to determine their pricing. There's so much in this interview, and I know you are truly going to find it helpful. As always, there's no advertising on this podcast apart from me and my book and my guest. Barbara, you can contact her through her website, designyourlifefoundation.com. All the connections will be in the show notes. This episode is brought to you by my book and me with the same name as the podcast, So You Want to Start a Business. If you'd like a complimentary copy, head to healthynumbers.com.au and you only have to pay for the postage. For the Kindle version, head to Amazon or wherever you buy your books online. Anyway, enough from me right now. Let's listen to what Barbara has to say about her life and about starting and running her own business and so much more. You are in for such a treat. I just loved this and I've listened to it a couple of times. Barbara's just delightful. Hello, and here we are today with Barbara Mutedzi. Hello, Barbara. So lovely to see you there.
Hi, Ingrid. Thank you so much for this opportunity to come on your podcast.
Well, and thank you so much for getting up early because I know it's early in your part of the world. And with that, Barbara, where in the world are you right now?
I am currently based in Harare, Zimbabwe, in Africa, Southern Africa.
In beautiful Southern Africa. Yeah, it's so gorgeous. So lovely to have you on the show. So we've got a pretty fabulous story to tell here. So let's get into it. What business are you in? What is your business?
So I am in the people business, is what I'd like to say. I'm a conscious leadership coach, And my purpose is to help people harness and control the power they already have within themselves to live their life purpose. So I call myself a catalyst, because all of us know why we're here. We might not be articulate about it, but we do know why we are here. So I'm a catalyst for other people's life purpose.
I love that. A catalyst for other people's life purpose. That's wonderful. So when did you start this business?
Just over about 10 years ago, but not fully. I didn't go straight into business. I slowly transitioned into it. I started I'm still a researcher, so I'm trained as a medical anthropologist, and I have a background in health and community psychology. So I used to work in a 9 to 5 job, but there was something missing because I felt like I had so much more to give. So a bit of my background, I had to mature very quickly because my biological parents died, all of them, both of them before I was 17 years old. So I had to become an adult very quickly. And with that maturity, I always was the person that people came for advice. You know, all my peers always came to me for advice. And I enjoyed that very much, to see the joy that the advice I was giving brought to people. And before then, I didn't know what life coaching was. And I started off mentoring young people within the organizations I was working in, 9 to 5 jobs, as part of HR. So I would do my research as what I was employed to do, but then I would also assist the HR departments with mentoring of the young interns who are coming in. And then I started building my business from there, and then transitioned into doing it over weekends and evenings. And then with time, I moved into consultancy, and then from that into business. So it was a slow transition into a full-time business.
Barbara, thank you. Well, I'm very sorry about your parents, and that must have, I mean, I can't imagine. I also don't have my parents, but I mean, to have it happen at that young age, I can't imagine. I had mine for a very long time, so I'm sorry to hear that. But what a wonderful way you then became that mentor to your peers and to others. And I love the way you described how it was a slow journey, because I think so many people are looking for the fast, the quick, the instant. And it's these sorts of businesses do grow quite slowly, don't they? And it was wonderful. I just have to ask you, what is medical anthropologist?
So anthropology is the study of people and culture, and why we do the things we do, and you know what structures informed the behavior that we do in all the different spaces in our lives. The medical part, I've always been interested in health in general. So from high school, I wanted to become a doctor, because in my head, what I knew was I wanted to help people, but I didn't necessarily know that I wanted to be a coach. And the first thought that came to mind was, well, I'm going to be a doctor, because I was exposed to that is the way that people help people. So I've always wanted to be a doctor, but it wasn't even that. It was, I was interested in health, and I'm not sure where that started from actually. And so, you know, over time, I started sort of thinking, so how can I become more healthy? And what does health mean? And I'm interested in psychology. I'm interested in anthropology. So I'll do maybe an undergrad in psychology. So did that. Then thought, no, there's something missing. Because if we are understanding the psyche of an individual, but their influence with society, what sort of studies can I do that influence that? And so I came across anthropology, which is study of people and how culture influences who they are. And then because that niggling thought at the back of my mind around health was always still there, and I've always been health oriented as a person, I then came across medical anthropology, because in my undergrad, I did an honors in social cultural anthropology, but I still had that inclination to want to do something in health. And so I came across medical anthropology, which wasn't offered in any of the African universities. And I don't know if they've started offering it now. So I actually found it online when I went searching in the UK. So I did my master's in medical anthropology at Durham University up north in the UK. And what it is the decisions we make because of or despite of our health, and you know, encompassed all in culture. So what medical anthropology did for me was encompass my curiosity about people and what they're influenced by in the environment, as well as the health making decisions. So health physically and health mentally as well. So it was like a neat package for all the things I was curious about at that stage. And also, it feeds into my coaching, which is great, especially around just our mental capacities and how we can use our minds and brains for higher performance.
Wow. That really sets you up to be a coach of a completely different caliber to anybody else, really, doesn't it? It just makes you incredibly unique, Barbara. Wow. You've probably already answered this question. What did you want from your business? So you were able to help people as working with HR and mentoring. You were setting it up at the weekends and evenings. And then it sounds like you've transited away from working in this system to having this business of your own. What did you want from the business? And I know you've talked about helping people, but what did you want the business to give you?
For me, it started off as autonomy, because I've never been a 9-to-5 job person, to be honest. I wake up at 3 a.m. every single morning. So by the time we get to work at 8 or 9 in the morning, I've done 5 hours or 6 hours of work. And because it's so quiet in the mornings, you get more stuff done. So I would go to work on a Monday and I've done all the work I needed to do for the whole week. And so I started getting frustrated, said, but I've got so much to give, but I can't move forward because you work in a team. You have to now start figuring out how to be able to, have that balance of how do I move forward fast, but also bring people up with me. So that lesson helped me coach other people to be more productive. So from becoming a life coach, I became a mindset and high performance coach, because then I started sharing all the tools that I used for myself whilst I was doing work at home in the early hours for other people at work. And then with that, what then happened was I'm an introvert. I'm a very big introvert. And when I say this, a lot of people are shocked because I come across as an extrovert because I talk a lot. But I'm a big introvert. I am great at speaking for an hour or 2 hours or be in a space with lots of people for an hour or two. And then I need to go into a quiet corner for the next couple of days. So working an 8-to-5 job did not help with that. And so I didn't feel fulfilled as a human being because I felt like I was stopping and starting and not being my authentic self because of that. And so transitioning into consultancy and then into full-time business filled up the hole that I felt within me, that something was missing and I wasn't giving my all. And also when I then did the work over the weekends and over the evenings, I was more joyful during that time as opposed to, the 8-to-5 time that I was at a full-time job. And so there was something in that I followed. So I followed the joy in me and I followed the things I was curious about. And, one of my mantras is that we're all spiritual beings who are living this limited human life, and our spirit knows why we are here. So you can call it your spirit, your intuition, your soul, the God in you, your Dharma, whatever it is, that voice in you that really knows you, knows why you're here. And when we take time to follow the things we're curious about and to follow and do the things we're joyful about, I call those little breadcrumbs that our soul lives for us to follow towards our life purpose. And I use that when I'm coaching people to figure out their life purpose. So for me, I followed and wanted to do the things that brought me joy. And that's how I got to do what I'm doing.
Isn't that just gorgeous? I love that. And the breadcrumbs, which brings up the Hansel and Gretel story of following the breadcrumbs back. Yeah. So that, because it's just the little gems that you just get. And to follow your true joy brings you where you are now. Barbara,
Absolutely.
When did the business feel real? When was that moment then you kind of went, pinch me, this really and truly is a business? Do you remember that moment? Is there one? Or?
Oh, yeah.
Do tell, please.
There were several, and I'm laughing at myself because I don't like telling this story.
Okay.
But there were several. The biggest one was when I couldn't save my earnings. I couldn't save my earnings, and I was so excited to go out and save the world. And I wasn't doing my finances correctly. So I had to now I'm a big saver and investor. So I like saving money so I could invest. And then at some stage, I was just getting by in my bills. And I was thinking, well, this does not feel like, I should be doing this for a long time, but I really enjoy doing this. and I had to sit down with myself and say, you are running a business. Like, what can you show me in your bank account or in your finances that you're running a business? And I couldn't answer that question for myself. So I had to now realign and refocus by putting together a business strategy, like really defining it properly and being clear on what my purpose is, why am I here on this planet, and what am I using my business? How am I using it so it serves that and it serves other people? And being clear on my vision as well as my mission statements, and from there financing the different activities I needed to do to actually now, answer the question about what are you doing and how are you presenting your business. So it was a bit of a shock to the system, and I didn't like that.
Oh, Barbara, I have to say, I've asked this question 150 something times on the podcast, and I've never had anybody answer it quite like that. Every answer is different, actually. To be honest, it's one of those questions that I just love. Okay, so you started off mentoring people through the HR and your peers, and then you gradually built. But where do customers come from? How do people find you? And you can tell us what your website is right now, because anybody listening might be interested in having a look. We don't have advertising on this podcast. You just get to shamelessly promote yourself. But seriously though, how did people find you? How do customers know that what you're offering is for them?
Yeah. Well, in the beginning, to be honest, it was so easy because, in the beginning, I started off working as a secondary in HR departments. I would sort of, provide this mentoring structure and say, because I already mentor young people, I'm happy to take on the interns who are coming in so I can show them the ropes and also show them what the professional side is like, because they're coming from an educational space and those are different platforms. And so I already had clients moving in. And with that, after I had left the organization and then they had also transitioned into other organizations or other work, they then, kept in touch. And so it was so organic that way, and I was so lucky that way. And also what then happened with time, it became word of mouth. So because I had a big base of young people, they then also referred, their other mates from other universities and other organizations. And from that, it began to grow. And with other HR departments, they got to know what I was doing. And I would always be in conversation with them. So, where are the gaps? Where do you need help? Because with HR organizations that I worked with, they had a set system to say, well, we're here to sign contracts and to provide all this paperwork for people. There was no conversation about this, what we call the soft skills and personality, and how we can really step into who we already are inside and bring that in the work that we're doing. So a lot of emotional intelligence training came into that. And that spurred me on because people kept coming back, and I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed learning about people's backgrounds. The anthropology in me loves to hear people's cultures and how they grow up and how they think. And so that was fueling me as well. And because I was excited, then people were also excited. With the challenge I am finding even today is we don't listen to each other, and we all want to be listened to. And so having to provide a safe, non-judgmental space where people could share, and even if they don't share themselves fully, at least know that that platform is there for when they are ready. That for me is fulfilling, because I grew up with not having someone to speak to as a young child. I was an only child for 9 years growing up.
Wow.
And my mother was a single mother for a number of years because my dad died earlier. And so she was always at work. So I've always been a lone child, and I always wanted to share information and speak to people, but I didn't have the knowledge and the words to use. And I didn't know how, because I didn't have a sibling. So it took me time to cultivate my voice. And so it's really important for me to provide that safe, non-judgmental space for people to step into and feel understood. Because from that, when we have a stable platform, it's easier for us to leverage from that and to grow from that, because we always know that we've got some sort of support. So that has been important for me. And, clients come back because that's all we really need, to be listened to, and then to be maybe provided different viewpoints and then take from that what works for us.
Wonderful. And I think the proof of that is that referral, the fact that people tell other people. I've just had Amy Foley on my podcast, and her entire business years later is entirely referral. They've never advertised. Everything they do is referrals. And it's quite amazing how that can actually be a really trusted, true way of growing and building a business. Thank you. Okay, so here's some money questions, and I know you've talked about the fact that the money wasn't adding up. So you went back and did this plan, and you had a look at the finances. How did you fund your ability to leave your job and become a business? And how did you know that the business was actually going to make money, that you could do that? How did you get the viability? How did you know the idea was viable? Because it's all very well doing this for people and helping them, but were people paying you for it?
Yeah. So I don't know if I would have said 100% that I knew I was going to make money, to be honest. What I knew was that I was worried that if I left, my first fear moving from a 9-to-5 job into my own consultancy and then business was that I won't be able to pay bills. That was my first fear. So in anything in life, even starting a new business, address your fears. So sit down with yourself and say, what are my fears in this new thing that I want to start? And my biggest one was paying bills. So I said, okay, you're afraid of paying bills. How about accumulate some funds and pay all your bills 6 months to a year in advance, so that at least now you can focus for at least 6 months to a year to focus on your business without worrying about your finances, because that's where your challenge is. And then we'll see after a year what happens. That's literally what I did, because I knew that this is what brought me joy and this is what I wanted to do. And so I faced those fears, and the biggest one was that paying bills. There's no one else who's going to pay my bills. So what can I do? How can I mitigate that? And so I saved up, paid all my bills in advance, and put some money aside for any emergencies. So that helped me transition from the job, full-time job, into my own space. And then because I already had a marketplace that was seeking coaching, and I didn't know the term coaching, to be honest, when I went in, but I knew that people were always coming back, and it was going to be, I will use the term viable now, but I knew that it was going to be somehow okay then. I did not have any intelligence to figure out how it was going to be okay, because there were so many broken homes, and there still are, and no safe place for people to truly be heard. And so, to understand one's life beyond the requirements of being a student or a parent or a professional or a business owner was so important for me, because those elements were missing in my life and for the people who were coming on board. So that helped me. So that's the first thing I did, was pay off, all my bills in advance, so that I didn't have to worry about that. The second thing was, so I'd given myself an exit strategy to say, okay, in a year, I'm going to make sure I save this money, pay all my bills. And in that year, each month, I would buy office type resources that I would need when I was then working for myself. So 1 month I'll buy a computer, the next month I'll buy a printer, the next month I'll buy office supplies. But by the time I left, my office at home was set up, and I didn't have to start from scratch. So that transition really helped me, and sitting down with my fears and then addressing them. I'm sure you know this, the acronym for fear is FEAR, false evidence appearing real. So instead of telling myself, oh no, this is not going to work, I'm providing myself false evidence without even having tried it. And that makes us not move forward at all, unfortunately. But you can turn that acronym on its head and say, face everything and rise. Because when you face everything, you are able to learn from that and then grow from that, because there's no such thing as failure. You fall down and you get up and you move on. The beautiful thing about being a human being is we're dynamic, we're not static, we constantly change. We're not the same people we were 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So
Thank
change
goodness.
is constant. Yes.
Praise the Lord.
The other thing, I know, right? The other thing with fear is, our heart beats when we are excited, right? And our heart beats fast as well when we are afraid. But the conscious part of the brain is the one that then decides what that beating of the heart is and what it can be. Because your heart doesn't know, fight or flight, it will beat fast anyway. So FER can also mean feeling excited and ready as opposed to being afraid. So you get to decide what your fear stands for, and you can choose and then move forward with that. That's the beautiful thing of being an adult most times, is you have some sort of choice. So yeah.
Yeah,
So that helps.
That is so wonderful. In fact, I was just listening to a webinar today about the neuroscience of confidence and how we can use it. And they were talking about exactly the same thing, that in that moment we can consciously choose, that unconscious takes us here, but in that moment we can train ourselves to consciously choose the way we want to respond. And I love those acronyms for fear. FEAR, I love those. They're so good. And I love what you said about the heart just beats. So if you've listened, if you were not paying attention just in that moment at the podcast, you might want to go back for 2 minutes and just listen to what Barbara had to say again. I'm telling the listeners when they're listening.
Okay.
So how did you choose a pricing model? Because this is one of the things that pretty much everybody asks me, whether it's setting up a yoga studio or a Pilates studio, or being a physiotherapist or a coach, or anything that requires personal service. How do we choose a pricing strategy? And could you take us on the journey that you've had from where you started to where you are now? You could be specific about pricing, but it's more around the philosophy of how do you decide, because you were doing it in your job, so you weren't being paid directly, and then suddenly at some point you start to say, I'm happy to work with you and here's the price. So how did you decide that?
I really did struggle in the beginning. It was really difficult because I had no idea and had not been exposed to any coaches, locally. All the coaches I knew were international, and I thought that they were beyond who I was because I didn't know of the term coaching.
Yes.
And so it was so difficult for me in the beginning, and I would charge ridiculous prices, more like token charges, because I wanted to start generating income, but I had no idea what to benchmark that against. But one of the biggest advice that I would give myself if I was to restart was understand what value you are bringing. So you are charging for the value you're bringing. And I'll explain that a bit more. So I started off as a life coach, and I did some research online after a couple of years to really understand what this was. And I bumped into the term life coach. And so I thought, let me do, a mini course and see what this is all about. And I realized that what people were calling life coach is what I was actually doing anyway. And I thought, I wonder what life coaches actually get paid, in other spaces. And I started doing that research. And also because of the courses I was doing around coaching, I was also, the platform was open to what other coaches were offering in terms of value and what they were charging for that, and also what their qualifications are and what they were bringing to the table. And with I'm going to diverse a little bit. So with my life coaching, what I found is after a couple of years, we would make or create these lovely goals with my clients and plans about their lives, but we'd always reach a plateau. Like we would never grow beyond that. And that frustrated me because I was like, well, I'm here to help people, but I'm only getting them so far. This is not great. What's going on? So I did more research and I came across mindset coaching. And I was like, that's interesting. Let's delve more into that. So I did a bit of that. And then I became known as a mindset and high performance coach. And then again, after a couple of years, I reached a plateau and I was like, no, this is not okay. It doesn't feel right. What's going on? So then I studied neuroscience-based coaching, which is study of the mind and the brain and how we can harness them for higher performance. And so with all this education, I would provide all this information and worksheets into my clients' journey, which meant I was providing more value for them. And because I was not exposed to the international market, I would compare my prices and what I was bringing to the table, and then adjust my costing accordingly. So the more you grow, the more value you're providing, the more you can match that to the pricing. And it's still going on because now I'm known as a conscious leadership coach because I bring in Western philosophy of leadership. I bring in Eastern philosophy of leadership. I bring in spiritualism. I've, started looking into quantum physics and consciousness, and African philosophy is just a wide, holistic way of looking at life and self-leadership, as well as leading other people. So I also work with business owners and leadership teams to help them, harness the power they have within their teams for higher performance, for higher impact, and for profit. And so all of that is a lot of research, understanding who you are as a coach, what you're bringing to the table, so your value, and then leveraging that against what people in the same industry are also offering. One of the other things that I haven't tried that I'm going to write it down, I'm going to do this, and it's just come to me now, and I'd like to share it as well. And so I don't know if this is going to work, but to look at coaching institutions, so your international coaching federations and all those other spaces who work with lots of coaches, and ask if they are able to give a benchmark against value on what we should be charging. So those are different ways that we can figure out what pricing structures are. I can tell you at the moment that my pricing is much lower for the value that I provide. And, you know, with time, as I increase the value, we are going to increase those costs. But at the moment, they're doing okay. And my website, by the way, having said that, is one word, designyourlifefoundation.com, for all other information that you might need.
Yes, Design Your Life Foundation.
.com, yes.
.com, yes. Very, very nice. So that's a terrific answer. There is actually some benchmark studies have been done around, and my understanding of, and I've been in and around the coaching bodies for close to 20 years actually, and there's a large disparity. You know, there's some people who are barely making a living out of coaching, and then there's people who we see, you know, in the social media claiming 6, 7, 8 figures, you know, that's sort of the massive, you know, so I think there's, you know, there's great disparity, and you're absolutely spot on. It's always about the value, and people will pay for the value that they're receiving. Terrific answer. Now you've sort of answered one of the reflective questions, but really, if you could take that magic wand and go back, is there anything, you know, that you really wish you had done completely differently? And I know that you've just talked about pricing, but is there anything else about your business that you wish you'd done differently?
Absolutely. A business plan. Business plan, one with forecasts and projections and proper financial planning. If I had that in place, that would have been awesome. And I still take that advice for myself today when I go off track.
When you go off track, you do. Do you wish that, and this is probably the same, possibly the same thing, if somebody could have told you something that is there anything different that somebody could have told you? They possibly could have said that having a business plan was a good idea, but is there anything that somebody could have told you?
To seek help from other people and not to feel alone, because there are other people who've been in business for longer than you. And it's not to say that you always take their advice. You take from that what works for you. So I started off on this lone road by myself. And with time, and also because of my research background, I then started going online and really researching and trying to understand what is going on. So do not limit yourself within the 4 walls, if I can call them 4 walls, of your country or your community, but reach out, because we are a global village, and we're so lucky at the moment that, you know, the whole world is so open, and, you know, we've got internet and Wi-Fi and all of that, and we can reach out and learn so much more from that. Yeah.
It's so true, and now more than ever, but that the flip side to that is there is so much information that you know, that can feel overwhelming. So Barbara, I love your FEAR reimagined. But here's a question about what makes it tough. Has it been tough in that business journey? What have been the toughest times, and how do you get through that?
The toughest thing was second guessing myself, because I did not have a template to use. Yes, fair and fine, I was going to do it because it felt right, and I did do it. But the conversations, the self-talk I had in my head were not kind ones. So because I didn't have anything I could compare with. And so it was tough on myself because of the self-talk. But I went through it anyway. And in retrospect, I don't know if you've heard of Lisa Nichols. She talks about, you know, always put your purpose when you're driving a car. Think that your purpose is in the driver's seat, and then fear is in the back seat. Because if you put fear in the front seat, fear will always be there. So you'll say to fear, okay, fear, we need to go and do this. And you go down one road, and fear will be like, no, but there are potholes in that road. Let's go another direction. Then you start in another direction, say, no, there's something happening on that. So fear is always sort of stopping you. But if you put your purpose in the driver's seat of your life, you always know where you want to end up or where you're going. And so fear will always, yes, prop up, but use fear more as fuel. In terms of it drives you to say, the reason why you're feeling afraid right now is maybe you don't have enough information about that thing because it's a new thing. Go and get more information. So Lisa Nichols says, put fear in the backseat. I say, put fear in the boot. Because if you put fear in the backseat, you can still see fear in the rearview mirror.
And you can hear it.
Yes, absolutely. So yes, put purpose in the driver's seat, and then once a month or over every weekend, take out fear and say, okay, what am I afraid of right now? Where can I get this information? Where can I get the support from? Who can I ask? Who can I reach out to? And then from that, you start developing, who you are. And so that second guessing for me was not great because it made me move slower than I wanted to. And then I started getting frustrated and I didn't have anyone to ask questions, from. And so it's important to have those mentors and supporters around you to help you out. After I figured out, okay, I need a business strategy and I sort of knew what to do, but wasn't still sure. I then reached out for a business coach. And she helped me put a structure in place. And that was very helpful. And I knew what I needed to do, but it took an extra person to actually direct me. So getting a coach or a mentor doesn't mean you don't know what you want to do. It's needing help with that structure and to push you forward. And then the biggest mentor, to be honest, is yourself. Yes. And the way you can be your biggest mentor is personal growth. There is no bigger education than personal growth. The more you know yourself, the easier it is to direct yourself. So that is so important.
And running a business is one of the greatest self-development, personal growth strategies that you can enter into.
Oh my goodness, yes.
It truly is. Yes. So along the way, feedback. Who gives you feedback? You've talked there about a business coach. You were getting the information from the other HR department, so you were getting feedback about what you were doing. And anybody else gives you good feedback, Barbara?
So yes, all of those that you say, definitely my clients, I always ask them, and my questions about feedback are not outright to say, hey, okay, tell me how you're doing, because I know people sometimes not really outright when you ask them those questions. So I embed them in my worksheets and also in conversations during the coaching sessions to say, when I asked this question, how did it feel for you? How would you have liked me to ask that question? Or would you ask me that question in a different way? And that kind of constant feedback helps it become a conversation and I can adjust moving forward. And also feedback from fellow business owners and partners has been really helpful. And it also depends because, people have different skills. So at the moment, I am reading a lot around Jungian psychology. And so I have a number of Jungian psychologists who I speak to on a regular basis when I'm asking them questions. And when I get aha moments on myself, then I speak to them, because then I don't want to have to put something in my client's worksheets that maybe does not make any sense. So I test all these theories with the different people around me. And then when it comes to research, because I still use my research with my clients' worksheets, I speak to my mother actually, because she's a big researcher, around, proper ways of doing research, where you can get great articles and things like that. So it really depends on where you feel you need more support, and then go seek the people who have either walked that journey or who have more information around that. So yeah, I've got a number of people who also help. The biggest thing as well, as coaches, is self-love. And I forget that sometimes. So I have girlfriends around who say, hey, what have you done this week for self-love? And that helps.
They hold you accountable to self-love. That's lovely.
Yes, absolutely.
Can we just cycle back for a moment? Did you have anything of Lisa Nichols that you would particularly recommend? Do you have any favourites? Because I know she's got some pretty fabulous resources. Is there anything that's a particular favourite of yours?
The one that is called Use Fear as Fuel. And you can get it on the Mind Valley podcast or platform that was developed by or curated by Vishen Lakhiani, if you've heard of him. So that's one that I definitely use for all my clients. just use fear as fuel, because one of the things that does stop us from stepping into who we really are fears that are actually societal constructs, to be honest.
Yeah, they really are, because what's fearful in one part is not fearful in another. Okay, so as we're coming to a close, what are 3 characteristics, Barbara? And we've been listening to you for a little while, so we're getting a sense of who you are. What are 3 characteristics that you have that make you successful in business, and what are they?
I love this because when I started out, my first 3 values, I called them my SHE values, SHE. The S is simplify things as much as possible. And this was so important for me because coming from an academic background, I was using all these big words with people, and people didn't understand what I was saying, and I didn't know how to break it down. And so I then got confused and then thought, okay, maybe I'm not bringing value. So simplify things as much as possible. Once you complicate something, you lose people. And I'm continually working on that. So that's the S. The H is honesty and authenticity. So be honest with yourself, be vulnerable with yourself, who you are and what you can bring to the table, and what you can't, figure out how you can refer other people to different people around you. And that's important. So when we simplify things, the S, and we're honest with each other, the H, then we can become the E, which is efficient and effective, because everything is clear and on the table and everyone knows where we are going. So I call them my SHE values, and that's how I started my business, and that's how I run my life. When something is confusing, I know that there's a gap somewhere, and I need to be honest with myself moving forward.
That's wonderful, and that just cycles beautifully back to the fact that you're a performance and effectiveness. That's the essence of your business now. That is terrific. Okay, so someone comes to you as part of your life coaching and your performance coaching, and they say to you, so Barbara, so you've been working with them for a little while, and they say, I'm thinking about starting a business of my own. How do you respond to someone, like in general, we don't want to go through the whole coaching process, but what's your initial response to someone who comes and says, I'm thinking about starting my own business?
Yeah. The first question is why? I might say, oh, that sounds interesting. Why? Why do you want to start your business? And tell me more. Because the question why is so important. You know, when we were growing up as kids, we used to ask a lot of questions. And it was always, why, mom? Why, dad? Why are you doing this? Why is the world like that? And we've lost that curiosity as adults. But, you know, we talked earlier about, you know, following your joy and the things you're curious about, being breadcrumbs towards your wholeness. So when we stop being curious, we stop growing. And when we don't understand why we are doing something, when we fall flat on our face, it's going to be difficult to stand up again because we don't know why we're doing something. But the stronger your why is, the stronger you can step back into that purpose, the stronger you can move forward, the stronger you can actually understand, okay, things might not go in a straight line, but that's okay because I know what my why is and I'm sitting in that firmly. So the why question is so, so important.
Yeah, and that just beautifully goes back to what you were saying about having purpose in the driver's seat. It's absolutely about your purpose and your why. Lovely.
Yeah.
Barbara, as we bring this to a close, is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you absolutely want to share with our audience? Because the audience is people who are either thinking about starting a business or perhaps in their early days, because we do know that in fact, that we know there's people who are already running a business for quite some time listening in as well, because they just love business stories. Is there anything else you would say as we draw this to a close?
Absolutely. You are much more stronger than you can ever believe that you are. Belief is a social, cultural construct. You can choose what you want to believe in. So you're much stronger than you think you are. You have more in you that you could possibly fathom. And together with those around you, you can do even more. And sometimes the learning is not only in putting things on paper, but actually doing something. So take that first step. It takes much more fuel for, to fuel a jet, for takeoff than for it to circle the whole planet. So it's going to take a lot of energy, but that's okay because you're made of great stuff. So, the learning isn't the doing. You just have to act. That's all. That's all you have to do. And put purpose in your driver's seat, fear in the boot, and you're ready to go.
There's nothing more to say. I think we'll just leave it right there. Thank you so much, Barbara. This has been so fabulous. And I hope everybody has, I'm sure everybody's got so much from it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ingrid.
Thank you so much for listening to Barbara's terrific business startup story. Another story that gradual organic development of a business, that word of mouth being so important. Those 2 critical questions that she asked people who were bringing clients to her: where are the gaps and where do you need help? Of course, I loved what she said about wanting to save the world and yet she couldn't save her money and wasn't tracking her finances. Of course, I loved that part. So what did you think about her acronyms for FEAR, F-E-A-R? False evidence appearing real. For anyone who listened to the previous episode, number 139, you know that I spoke about making friends with fear. And it sounds like when Barbara uses face everything and rise, or feeling excited and ready, she is totally taking a different approach to fear. Anyway, absolutely. What were your standout moments? She's quite a chatter, isn't she? I thought I was a good chatter, but she really can tell a great story. Anyway, I have set up a new Facebook group. It's called Healthy Numbers Profit Lab, and it is the community for business owners, entrepreneurs who want to build and grow a profitable business. Head over to Facebook and look out for the group. There's a couple of questions to answer, and then you're in the group and you'll find a growing community of business owners. Every Monday, I go live at 12 noon on Sydney time. We talk about the things to help you in business, about mindset and money and cash flow and profit and paying yourself and much more. I know I'm known for being able to make the complex simple, and all those complicated things in business, all that jargon, all those difficult to understand complex things, I'm all about making business easy to understand. So that is my guarantee to you, to my wonderful listeners. Make it easy to always know about the next and the latest episodes by subscribing to the podcast. As we always say, ideas without action, well, they're ideas. It is fabulous to have ideas. The question is, what actions are you inspired to take today? Till the next time, thanks for listening.